Hey, it's Drybear, and today I'm going to walk you through what is easily the biggest powerhouse in Dragon's Dogma 2, the Magick Archer Vocation. If you're someone who can't decide exactly what role you want to fill, and you instead just want to fill every role, then Magick Archer might be for you. Or if you get tired of having to focus weak points and just want to blast everything to death, then it's definitely in your wheelhouse. We'll go through all the best weapons based on what stage of the game they're in, the armor you're looking for, the best rings that you need, all of the best skills and skill combinations, and some extra gameplay tips on top. To start with, you will need to unlock the Magick Archer Vocation by playing through the game. If you need, I have a detailed video covering all of the Vocation unlocks, including Magick Archer, and I'll leave a link to that down below in the description and in the comments. But put simply, you need to make it to the volcanic island, head left as soon as you come in, talk to the old man and give him some plants, then go up to the house that's on the other side just right as you enter the volcanic island, talk to the woman and complete the quest there, and you'll be able to unlock the Magick Archer Vocation and also unlock the Maester teaching for Martyr's Bolt. Let's talk gear. You can get a very easy Magick Archer weapon at the very start of the game if you don't have one already by traveling from Vernworth all the way over to the Dark Horde cave, and just south of this cave, so like just south of it right down off here, you'll find a chest inside of a gazebo that has the Gimbelgeyer in it. From there you can upgrade to the Dragon's Breath Magick Archer bow. This one is available in Bak Batal after you've completed a couple quests from the basic armory, and you can also grab the Black Wing bow if you're further along in the main scenario from the same vendor. Once you complete the quest line as well and you talk to the Magick Archer Maester's husband, Gout Statfer, he will also serve as a vendor that will have weapons available for you as well. However, once you reach endgame and you're progressing towards that part, you want to pick up the Grin Mahar, which is the endgame archer bow. And you can pick this up from any endgame vendor, including the Dragon Forged for Worm's Life Crystals. For enhancements, you want to focus on Elven enhancement because it will increase the magic power of the bow, which is quite great. And you can also work into Dwarven if you want a little bit more knockback power, though it's not really necessary since you'll be able to get that done with a spell anyways. For armor, you want to focus on getting the best available that you're able to use, and then work your way towards this Griffin Resonance armor that you'll find in endgame, and try to focus on finding high magic defense and knockdown resistance as well, as you are a ranged fighter, which means that you are susceptible to getting stun locked and knocked down a bunch, so the more knockdown resistance you can get, the better. You can focus on either Elven upgrades for the enhancements to get extra magic defense, or again, you can go with Dwarven upgrades once you finish the Dwarven questline in Bak Batal to increase your knockdown resistance as well. Now, when it comes to rings, on most vocations, I'm going to recommend getting damage output, but for the Magick Archer, it's actually just not needed. You do plenty of damage with the abilities that you have, and you're more limited on your ability to use your actual skills, which means your focus needs to be on stamina for the most efficient output. For this, I recommend picking up the Ring of Triumph. This gives you 100 max stamina as well as carry weight and max health, which is pretty useful. But the two rings I would recommend most are going to be the Ring of Momentum and the Ring of Quickening. The Ring of Momentum will give you the biggest possible maximum stamina increase, and the Ring of Quickening will allow you to regenerate stamina faster, and this will allow you to use all of your overpowered abilities over and over and over again to kill anything that stands in your way. But you can also get the Ring of Vehemence or the Ring of Percipience if you're looking for a little bit of extra damage and your build isn't complete just yet. Next, let's talk about the gameplay of Magick Archer. There's some subtleties that you want to be aware of. First off, the base ability for the Magick Archer is Conversion. Every vocation in Dragon's Dogma 2 has their own special, unique vocation ability, and Conversion is the one that Magick Archer has. So what this does, if you look in the bottom right corner, you can see right now on my R1, if you're on controller, my R1 is set to pinpoint volley. So if I were to bring out my bow and aim, it'll be set to pinpoint volley, and it'll be a firing mode for the bow. If I hit Conversion when I'm not aiming, it'll switch that from pinpoint volley to rivet shot. The two differences here is that you can think of Rivet Shot as more of a focused single target attack. It will try to stack up shots on a single target rather than focusing on multiple targets at once. And if you switch from rivet shot to pinpoint volley, it will attempt to spread those shots out more than hitting one target. So you can say that when I have pinpoint volley, within the first second of me bringing this up, it targets all targets AoE and slowly adds more shots. If I switch to rivet shot, even though I have multiple targets in my area, it's going to focus on whichever target is closest to the center of my reticle. So one is focused on hitting one target or one weak point on an enemy as fast as possible. The other is focused on doing AoE, and there's benefits to both. Keep in mind that when you're fighting a large monster and you use pinpoint volley, it's going to focus on all the individual hit points on that monster, the wings, the head, the legs, the tail for a dragon, or on a cyclops, it might be the eyes, the arms, the legs, and the back, things like that. So it might be useful to target all of the weak points separately, or it might be useful to use the rivet shot to focus. In general, I tend to like the rivet shot more, as I do like trying to kill one target at a time in order to take them out, and generally does give you some nice DPS on that single target. However, keep in mind that pinpoint volley, just because there's tick marks here that show an individual shot for Magick Archer, each tick mark for pinpoint volley on average will do more damage than each tick mark for the rivet shot. So it might be the same amount of shots that you'll see here on it, but the shots themselves do a little bit less for rivet because it is more focused. Another thing to pay attention to is the size of your aiming reticle here. So if you see the size of this here, you can see how big it is. Any target inside of it will start getting stacks of aiming for your Magick bow. However, if you start moving, you'll see that the size of that aiming area shrinks down. So you actually have to be a lot more precise if you're moving. So generally you want to move if you are being focused in melee or you're in a bad spot. But if you're trying to get more targets or have better accuracy on this, you can stop moving in order to increase the size of that. That's for pinpoint volley. If you switch to rivet, the same thing happens here. So you can see that as I move, it gets more precise, and I step back and the area gets bigger, which allows me to focus more on hitting that target. You also generally want to wait until you have all of your shots lined up, so that the max amount of tick marks here, but you don't have to if you don't want to. If someone's right up in front of you, you can aim and then fire right away before you get all of the extra pieces. Next, let's talk skills, because there's actually a good amount of skills inside of the kit for Magick Archer that are pretty useful. Most vocations have a lot of skills that are just outshine everything else, and the same is true here for Magick Archer, but there's definitely some ones you want to pay attention to. The first is going to be Martyr's Bolt, which is kind of like an I win button that you get from the Maester as the Maester's teaching. This one has insane damage output, possibly the highest in the game alongside Meteor from Sorcerer, except it has a major downside in that you will start to channel the ability and then it will shoot out and do crazy AoE damage against all targets in the area. However, the longer you channel, the more damage it deals and the more max HP it takes away from you. So it's not like something you can spam over and over and over, but if you're up against a boss and you just rested to get max HP to the max, then you'll be able to do a ridiculous amount of damage. You can still use this sparingly on monster fights that prove to be pretty difficult. Just pop a little bit of max HP in and drop this down, and it will actually annihilate anything in the way and is a good fit into most kits. The next best is going to be Sagittit Downpour or Sagittit Avalanche. I'm probably saying that wrong, but this is essentially just a amped up version of your auto attack. So regularly when you're using Rivet Bolt, you can shoot out a whole bunch of bolts. This just does the same thing, but way stronger, which means it has tons of use in hitting weak points or even dealing damage in AoE. It also has a very high knockback power value, which means that you can use it in almost any possible situation. I use this in almost basically every single kit layout of abilities for my Magick Archer because it's so widely usable and the DPS output is insane. And while Magick Archer is probably one of the worst in the game at dealing weak point style damage, they also don't really need it because their normal damage is so ridiculous. You can take Sagittit Avalanche and focus on the chest on a dragon or the eye on a cyclops or the face on a minotaur and still do insane, ridiculous damage. An ability I don't see talked about a lot that is actually insanely busted is going to be Arctic Bolt, which is the upgraded version of Hailstone Bolt. And what this does is it allows you to charge up an ice ball in front of you. The longer you charge, the bigger it gets, and then you fire it out in a lob arc towards the target. However, this spell, this arrow, has a stupid amount of knockback power, which means that if it collides with any target, if it's fully charged, it's most likely going to trigger the first stage of their stagger animation in a single blow. This counts for any large monster except for maybe drakes and the Royce dragons, but in general, this does a ridiculous amount of stagger knockback power, and I use this all the time against monsters that might be in a bad spot, or you're just looking for some ground pound. If you're trying to do damage with your pawns, with your party group, knocking them down first gives not only a massive increase in the amount of damage that the target will take, which makes you stronger and your pawn stronger, but also means that the enemy won't be attacking you. It's also supremely useful against the monsters and enemy types that need to be staggered or knocked down before they can take a lot of damage. So like the Rattlers or the Magma Saurians that have insane heavy armor on the outside before they get knocked over and their belly is exposed, you can just hit them in the face with a fully charged Arctic Bolt or hit them in the back hind leg and you'll knock them over and kill them in one cycle. Now, in my opinion, those are the highest DPS or highest use abilities that are in the Magick Archer kit, but it doesn't mean that they are the only ones that are powerful. There's others that are insanely good. Bolt Chain Strike as well as the Ricochet Hunter are very good at dealing lightning damage, and especially on big targets, you can Bolt Chain Stake all of the different hit points together to do lightning damage. And Candescent Orb and Blazefang Arrow are really good at setting targets on fire, though I really only use them against Griffins, as the other three abilities we talked about would be more useful in this situation. And to be honest, because you have so many hits in your normal form, especially using Rivet Shot, as long as you have an elemental affinity attached to your weapon, regular attacks are sufficient to do damage to targets that have an elemental weakness. So if you have a mage in your party that's granting you elemental boons, just attack normally and you'll do plenty of damage without having to go through the cost of spending stamina or building up the fire time for all these other elemental attacks. If you like playing support or you want to try playing without a mage, or maybe you just want to be kind of on that support side, there's 3 abilities you'll be able to unlock later on in the Magick Archer leveling, which is going to be Recovery Arrow, Life-Taking Arrow, and Fortalice. These are super good. These kind of stand in for the mage abilities that can be covered by these same functions as well, but if you want to res a pawn from a distance, Recovery Arrow is great for that. Life-Taking Arrow can help slow the enemy down and help reduce targets' effectiveness by stealing stamina and HP from them, can be super useful. And then Fortalice as well can be useful for putting barriers up on teammates from a safe distance without having to incant a spell. Right now, my favorite overall layout of the skills is Blazefang Arrow, Arctic Bolt, Sagittate Avalanche, and Bolt Chain Stake, because Bolt Chain Stake is useful against targets that you know are weak to lightning. Blazefang Arrow is great for setting targets on fire that are extremely weak to fire, like Griffins, Arctic Bolt for staggering anything and anyone that comes in your path, and then Sagittate Avalanche for insanely high DPS. And I tend to avoid using Martyr's Bolt, not only because it has a downside, but also because it's just ridiculously powerful. When it comes for augments, some of the best ones are going to be around stamina consumption, because again, you want to be able to use your skills all back to back as much as possible. So from the Warfarer, you can pick up the Zeal augment, which reduces the stamina consumed when performing a weapon skill. Veracity from Magick Archer recovers stamina when you get the killing blow on a target, which means you can keep using your abilities. In some situations, the Sorcerer Asperity can be useful as well. Again, some targets are very susceptible to debilitations that you're getting from your elemental attacks, so it can be super useful to get this, but again, it depends on your build. Your build may actually not get much value out of this, but if it does, then it's definitely something that you should consider. Sorcerer Constancy can be great because knockdown is your greatest enemy, just like a normal archer. If you get staggered or you get stun locked, it can be super bad, so using this in really heavy situations where you get into trouble can be useful. And you can also pick up Catalysis, which is a great opportunity for doing extra damage to a target when you're dealing the elemental damage that they are weak to. It can make a big effect on their overall damage intake. You can even run the Dominance augment from Warrior, which is useful with the Arctic Bolt, which you can basically one-shot stagger almost anything while running this. The Mage Exaltation is amazing for increasing your stamina recovery speed so you can keep using abilities. The Archer Endurance increases your maximum stamina. You're starting to to see a trend here. You get the idea. Next, let's go into just gameplay tips for Magick Archer, some lesser known subtle things about the Vocation that once you master can have a huge impact on how you play the Vocation. The first one is climactic arrow is one of your core skills and something that I don't see a lot of Magick Archers taking advantage of. And the way this works is that when you release your shot, the instant that it gives fully drawn, so as soon as you hit your max number of targets and your bow glows, if you release the shot right in that moment for a perfect release, you will actually increase the damage of your normal shot. So for pinpoint volley and rivet shot, you'll get extra damage out of this. And again, this is why I say that if you have a elemental augment on your weapon, it's far superior to just use pinpoint volley or rivet shot with the climactic arrow perfect release than it is to try and use any of the elemental shots, just because if you get good at this rhythm, the damage output is comparable, which goes perfectly with protracting arrow, which is your last core skill that you will unlock. And what this does is when you use any of your fire, ice, or lightning weapon skills, that element will be applied to your normal shots with quick fire, pinpoint volley, and rivet shot for a short period of time, which means that if you were to use Arctic Bolt, you'll get ice arrows for a short period of time. If you use Blaze Fang arrow, you'll get fire arrows for a short period of time, which means even if you don't have a mage in your party with any of those affinities or boons to make your weapon that element, you can still give it to yourself with proper planning and using of the correct ability, which is why my suggested loadout of skills includes one of each of these three elements. So for example, if you know the target is weak to lightning, you can use your bolt chain stake and then shoot off a couple rounds of rivet shot with perfect release and then use another elemental shot on top of it. And the last tip I'll leave you with is a subtle one, but can save you, especially when fighting against golems or any of the large monsters that have specific weak points that you have to hit. You can target targets with your shots and they will automatically fire at those targets and fly toward them, as you can see. However, the shots that you fire out are susceptible to colliding with collision, which means that even though I lock onto this gore harpy here, if I were to stand behind a wall and fire, it'll still get stuck on this. Now, sometimes those shots make it through anyways, but you still are susceptible to losing shots along the way. However, you can use your grace period after locking on to fire shots around corners. So if I were to lock onto one of these gore harpies and get some shots there, I can look away and then fire, and you'll notice that it'll still hone in on the target. And you can use this against targets like golems, for example, that might have a weak point that's on the other side of them, and you can't actually get access to it. You can target them with it and then aim in a different direction, and then those bolts will then work their way back around to hit the target, and it can save you in a couple situations. And that is the Magick Archer Vocation, easily one of the strongest, if not the strongest, vocations in the game. And if you have other vocations you'd like for me to cover, drop that down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.